صل على محمد. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير الأمر حي على خير الأمر. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم اجعل قلبي بارا وعيشي قارا وعملي سارا ورزقي دارا وأولادي إبراهيم اجعل قلب نبيك مستقرا وقرارا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل فرجهم.
صلی اللہ علیہ وآلہ وسلم مستقرا وقرارا برحمتک یا ارحم الراحمین. صلی علی محمد. اعوذ باللہ من الشیطان الرجیم. سبحان اللہ والحمد للہ ولا الہ الا اللہ واللہ اکبر. اللہ اکبر اللہ اکبر. اشہد ان لا الہ الا اللہ اشہد ان لا الہ الا اللہ اشہد ان محمد رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وآلہ وسلم. اشہد ان محمد رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وآلہ وسلم. اشہد ان امیر المومنین و امام المتقین علی ولی اللہ ووصی رسول اللہ وخلیفتہ بلا فاصلہ. اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد. اشہد ان امیر المومنین و امام المتقین علی ولی اللہ ووصی رسول اللہ وخلیفتہ بلا فاصلہ صلوات اللہ وسلامہ علیہ. حی علی الصلاۃ حی علی الصلاۃ حی علی الفلاح حی علی الفلاح حی علی خیر العمل حی علی خیر العمل. قد قامت الصلاۃ قد قامت الصلاۃ. اللہ اکبر اللہ اکبر لا الہ الا اللہ. اللہ اکبر. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. الحمد للہ رب العالمین الرحمن الرحیم مالک یوم الدین. ایاک نعبد و ایاک نستعین. اہدنا الصراط المستقیم صراط الذین انعمت علیہم غیر المغضوب علیہم ولا الضالین. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. انا اعطیناک الکوثر فصل لربک وانحر انا شانئک هو الابتر. اللہ اکبر. سبحان ربی العظیم وبحمدہ. اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد. سمع اللہ لمن حمدہ. اللہ اکبر. سبحان ربی العلی وبحمدہ. اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد. اللہ اکبر. استغفر اللہ ربی و اتوب الیہ. اللہ اکبر. سبحان ربی العلی وبحمدہ. اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد. اللہ اکبر. بحول اللہ وقوتہ اقوم واقعد. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. الحمد للہ رب العالمین الرحمن الرحیم مالک یوم الدین. ایاک نعبد و ایاک نستعین. اہدنا الصراط المستقیم صراط الذین انعمت علیہم غیر المغضوب علیہم ولا الضالین. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. قل هو اللہ احد اللہ الصمد لم یلد ولم یولد ولم یکن له کفوا احد. کذالک اللہ ربی. اللہ اکبر. اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد. ربنا اغفر لی ولوالدی وللمؤمنین یوم یقوم الحساب. رب ارحمہما کما ربیانی صغیرا. ربنا آتنا فی الدنیا حسنۃ وفی الآخرۃ حسنۃ وقنا عذاب النار. اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد. اللہ اکبر. سبحان ربی العظیم وبحمدہ. اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد. سمع اللہ لمن حمدہ. اللہ اکبر. سبحان ربی العلی وبحمدہ. اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد. اللہ اکبر. استغفر اللہ ربی و اتوب الیہ. اللہ اکبر. سبحان ربی العلی وبحمدہ. اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد. اللہ اکبر. الحمد للہ. اشہد ان لا الہ الا اللہ وحدہ لا شریک لہ واشہد ان محمدا عبدہ ورسولہ. اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد وتقبل شفاعتہ وارفع درجتہ بحول اللہ وقوتہ اقوم واقعد. اللہ اکبر. سبحان ربی العظیم وبحمدہ. اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد. سمع اللہ لمن حمدہ. اللہ اکبر. سبحان ربی العلی وبحمدہ. اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد. اللہ اکبر. استغفر اللہ ربی و اتوب الیہ. اللہ اکبر. سبحان ربی العلی وبحمدہ. سبحان اللہ سبحان اللہ سبحان اللہ. اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجہم واحشرنا معاہم. اللہ اکبر. الحمد للہ. اشہد ان لا الہ الا اللہ وحدہ لا شریک لہ واشہد ان محمدا عبدہ ورسولہ. اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد. السلام علیکہ ایہا النبی ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. السلام علینا وعلی عباد اللہ الصالحین. السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. اللہ اکبر، اللہ اکبر، اللہ اکبر. اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعظائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار ومن كل بلية والفوز بالجنة والرضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وآله السلام. اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طاعة وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. شكرا 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 لله شكرا لله شكرا لله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين علي ولي الله ووصي رسول الله وخليفته بلا فاصل صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين علي ولي الله ووصي رسول الله وخليفته بلا فاصل صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع اللہ لمن حمدہ اللہ اکبر سبحان ربی العلی وبحمدہ اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد اللہ اکبر استغفر اللہ ربی واتوب الیہ اللہ اکبر سبحان ربی العلی وبحمدہ اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد اللہ اکبر بحول اللہ وقوتہ اقوم واقعد بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم الحمد للہ رب العالمین الرحمن الرحیم مالک یوم الدین ایاک نعبد و ایاک نستعین اہدنا الصراط المستقیم صراط الذین انعمت علیہم غیر المغضوب علیہم ولا الضالین بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم قل هو اللہ احد اللہ الصمد لم یلد ولم یولد ولم یکن له کفوا احد کذالک اللہ ربی اللہ اکبر اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد ربنا اغفر لی ولوالدی وللمؤمنین یوم یقوم الحساب رب ارحمہما کما ربیانی صغیرا ربنا آتنا فی الدنیا حسنة وفی الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجہم واحشرنا معاہم اللہ اکبر سبحان ربی العظیم وبحمدہ اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد سمع اللہ لمن حمدہ اللہ اکبر سبحان ربی العلی وبحمدہ اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد اللہ اکبر استغفر اللہ ربی واتوب الیہ اللہ اکبر سبحان ربی العلی وبحمدہ اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد اللہ اکبر الحمد للہ اشہد ان لا الہ الا اللہ وحدہ لا شریک لہ واشہد ان محمدا عبدہ ورسولہ اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد وتقبل شفاعتہ وارفع درجتہ بحول اللہ وقوتہ اقوم واقعد سبحان اللہ والحمد للہ ولا الہ الا اللہ واللہ اکبر سبحان اللہ والحمد للہ ولا الہ الا اللہ واللہ اکبر سبحان اللہ والحمد للہ ولا الہ الا اللہ واللہ اکبر سبحان اللہ والحمد للہ ولا الہ الا اللہ واللہ اکبر استغفر اللہ ربی واتوب الیہ اللہ اکبر سبحان ربی العظیم وبحمدہ اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد سمع اللہ لمن حمدہ اللہ اکبر سبحان ربی العلی وبحمدہ اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد اللہ اکبر استغفر اللہ ربی واتوب الیہ اللہ اکبر سبحان ربی العلی وبحمدہ اللہم صل علی محمد وآل محمد اللہ اکبر بحول اللہ وقوتہ اقوم واقعد سبحان اللہ والحمد للہ ولا الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. سبحان ربي العلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم واحشرنا معهم. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وتقبل شفاعته وارفع درجته. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. سبحان الله وبحمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي وبحمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي وبحمده. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أكبر أكبر أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد. الله أكبر. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى، السلام عليك يا أبا محمد حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى صحاب الحسين. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس، السلام على علي بن الحسين، السلام على محمد بن علي، السلام على جعفر بن محمد، السلام على موسى بن جعفر، السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء، السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام عليك يا سلطان العرب والعجم، يا علي يا ابن موسى الرضا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام على محمد بن علي، السلام على علي بن محمد، السلام على حسن بن علي، السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان الأمان الأمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا مظهر الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان، عجل الله تعالى فراجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
For those of you outside the hall, please come in. The Majlis is getting started.
صل على محمد وآل محمد. فدا سپا سلامی ہے جس کا نام حسین، میرا موئی میرا آقا میرا امام حسین، صبا کو بھیج کے روزے پکڑ رہا ہوں، دعا کرے قبول الہی میرا سلام حسین، جو کربلا کی زمیں پر ہوا تھا ان کا ورود، تو پھر کے دیکھتے تھے قبر کا مقام حسین، سنا نہائے کسی سنگ دل نے لاکھ کہا، رسول کا ہوں نواسا ہے میرا نام، نہ پوچھو وقت وہ کیسا تھا جب مدینے سے چلے ہر ایک کا لیتے ہوئے سلام، پناہ لیتے تھے دشمن اجل کے دامن میں، جو وار کرتے تھے لے کر علی کا نام حسین، صلوات بر محمد و آل محمد. بار دیگر صلوات. گھر کو چھوڑا شاہ نے جنگل بسانے کے لیے، کربلا میں آئے تھے جنت میں جانے کے لیے، ظہر کو زینب سے جب ملنے گئے گھر میں حسین، کوئی ڈیوڑی پر نہ تھا پردہ اٹھا، کوئی ڈیوڑی پر نہ تھا پردہ اٹھانے، شے اٹھے پڑھ کر نماز صبح میں شر ہو گیا، حضرت زینب چلی کپڑے پہنا، حضرت زینب چلی کپڑے پہنانے کے لیے، کہتی تھی ماں خط میرے اکبر کو تھا پیغام مرگ، یہ جوانی آئی تھی گویا جوانی آئی تھی گویا بلانے کے لیے تھی صدا زہرا کی زینب مر گیا تیرا حسین گھر میں جا بیٹھی صفے ماتم بچھا گھر میں جا بیٹھی صفے ماتم بچھانے کے لیے گھر کو چھوڑا شاہ نے فاتحہ محمد وآل محمد صلوات جب زینب غریب کے رن میں پسر لڑے تنہا لڑے پواہ سب شیر اہل شر لڑے کس خوبصورتی سے علی کے جگر لڑے ایک شور پڑ گیا کہ غضب شیر نر لڑے ایک شور پڑ گیا کہ غضب شیر نر لڑے ورثہ انہیں ملا ہے جناب امیر کا یہ زور سب ہے شیر کی بیٹی کے شیر کا یہ زور سب ہے شیر کی بیٹی کے شیر کا زینب جو ننگے پاؤں کھڑی تھی قریب در عباس جا کے دیتے تھے یہ دم بدم خبر روئے نہ اب حضور مہم ہو چکی ہے سر لاکھوں سے لڑ رہے ہیں غضب آپ کے پسر لاکھوں سے لڑ رہے ہیں غضب آپ کے پسر زور آج پھر دکھا دیا خیبر کشائی کا اب تو انہی کے ہاتھ ہے میدان لڑائی کا اب تو انہی کے ہاتھ ہے میدان لڑائی کا آنسو بہا کے بنتے علی نے کہا کہ ہاں دے اور ہمت انہیں خلاقین سو جاں بچے کہاں ہزاروں کا وہ مارے کا کہاں کچھ ہو انہیں فلک نے نہ ہونے دیا کچھ ہو انہیں فلک نے نہ ہونے دیا بے کسوں اور اس پر مجھے اعتماد ہے خالق وہ دے کے جو میرے دل کی مراد ہے خالق وہ دے کے جو میرے دل کی مراد ہے بھیا کچھ اپنے بیٹوں کا مجھ کو نہیں خیال مر جائیں لڑکے یا کہ ہوں ٹاپوں سے پائے مال صدقے کروں ہزار جو ایسے ہونوں نحال سب دولتیں لٹی بچے فاطمہ سب دولتیں لٹی بچے فاطمہ آئے بہن پہ وہ جو بلا ان پہ آئی ہو دنیا میں کوئی ہو کہ نہ ہو میرا بھائی ہو دنیا میں کوئی ہو کہ نہ ہو میرا بھائی ہو یہ ذکر تھا کہ بھائی کو حضرت نے دی صدا عباس آؤ گر گئے زینب کے دل ربا دوڑے صدا یہ سنتے ہی عباس با وفا اسنائے راہ میں علی اکبر نے یہ کہا اسنائے راہ میں علی اکبر نے یہ کہا زندہ رکھا فلک نے یہ آنسو بہانے کو چلیے حضور جاتے ہیں لاشیں اٹھانے کو چلیے حضور جاتے ہیں لاشیں اٹھانے کو پیاری بہن کے بیٹوں کا جو دیکھا شہنحال तन चाक चाक है गुले सर्द बर्ग की मिसाल, उलझे हैं पेच खाए हुए गेसुओं के बाल, ऊधे हैं होठ चांद से चेहरे लहू से लाल, ऊधे हैं होठ चांद से चेहरे लहू से लाल, माथे हैं शख्सरों से अमा में भी दूर हैं, सब छोटी छोटी पसलियां तेगों से चूर है, सब छोटी छोटी पसलियां तेगों से चूर है, चिल्लाए गर्दनों के तले हाथ दे के शाह, मुँह से मिलाओ मुँह के मेरा हाल है तबाह, आँखों में दम था बोलते क्यों कर वो रश के माँ, रोते थे नब्ज देख के अब्बास से अर्श जा, रोते थे नब्ज देख के अब्बास से अर्श जा, दुनिया से कुछ करते थे बच्चे पले हुए, हाथों पे थे हुसैन के मन के ढले हुए, हाथों पे थे हुसैन के मन के ढले हुए,
Assalamu alaikum. Before I begin, I request a loud salawat. Brothers, before I begin, we don't want to disturb the Majlis. So what's happening is everyone's piling up at the end, and in the middle of the Majlis, people are not coming inside because there's no room to come. So I'm going to request everybody to please come up here, right by the carpet. Please, everybody in the middle, please come up here, just so that we can have space, because tonight, these are the big nights. Thank you so much. First announcement is there is a Sabil of Imam Hussein outside in the parking lot. So please visit the Sabil, especially if you're listening from the car, please visit the Sabil. Tonight, there will be a Tabood, Hazrat Honor Muhammad. There will be a Tabood taken out from the English Majlis, and there will also be a Tabood taken out from the Urdu Majlis. I request all the youth who want to take part in lifting the tabood to please, when the Masaib starts, to pile up in the back and take part in taking out the tabood tonight. The tabood will be taken out from the English hall, and then it's going to be taken down to the ladies. But there will also be a tabood taken out from the Urdu hall, and after it goes to the ladies, that tabood from the Urdu hall will be taken out to the parking lot. And for those who are listening into their car, they can go and do ziyarat. It will be kept there, and those who do not want to come inside, they can do ziyarat afterwards. Aside from that, once again, tonight is 5th Muharram. I don't have to explain the significance of these nights, but throughout the year, we do various programs, and Muharram Safar, all of you have gotten the calendar today, so you have gotten the schedule, and we have a variety of speakers coming from all over the country, and throughout the year, we have various programs, and for all these programs, there's a cost. We also have a Kharz Hasna of $500,000 that we still have to pay off. We please request you to donate. Go to the IEC Husseini website or Zelle at IECZPay786@hotmail.com. We will be doing our annual fundraiser on the night of the 8th Muharram, which will be Tuesday, and we're going to do it during the Majlis. We're going to do it during the English Majlis and the Urdu Majlis. But if you want to donate right now, please take the initiative, say Labbaik Ya Hussain, and please donate to IEC Hussaini. And without further ado, I'd like to request Maulana Syed Ali Abbas Razawi to recite the Majlis. Loud salawat.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أما بعد، قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Our series of discussions have gone into its sixth night. These nights which have gone before us, we've been discussing an idea which is the most basic idea, but the most distant for many people. That is the nur of wilaya, of which today the vast majority of us have lost track of. That which started from the very beginning, you find that in the 21st century we're deviating very quickly from that wilaya. See, there's a particular hadith, it's an interesting one, where you find that it says that Akhir Zaman, that we're in now, has two qualities to it. It is the time of hayra and the time of ghaiba. Hayra in the sense that you find that the vast majority of people will be in bewilderment. They'll be lost. You find to the extent that the believers will be lost too. That true Islam, in the words of Ayatollah Jawadi Amali, Islam and Nab, will have been lost. That the vast majority, from the top to the bottom, be it Shiism, outside of Shiism, the idea is that the deviation will have taken place. Not that people will be bad people, they'll still go to heaven, but the haqiqah of life itself would have been lost to them. And the reason being is that they would have lost the essence as to which direction to go to. You see, the most important thing in life is to understand the maqsad of life itself. The maqsad of life is not salah. It's not the maqsad of life. The maqsad of life is not sawm. It's not hajj. It's not zakat. It's not khums. They're mandatory elements of life. But even if you were to do all of them at the time, it would not guarantee you heaven. Because it's what? A tool. It's a tool that takes you to the end, to the maqsad, to the conclusion. Though prayer is important, and without prayer you can't get anywhere. But the fact of the matter is that in this day and age we see the end goal as prayer. We see the end goal as fasting. We see the end goal in these things, if you're religious. And if you're not religious, then you're completely far away from that. Therefore, those who are religious and non-religious are in the same boat because they can't see. And that's not their fault. Because above and beyond mankind itself are the angels. Insani Kamil is in front of the angels, Adam, and they can't see his haqiqah. They can't see, even though look at the Quran and see. They do two things which you don't do. Tasbih of Allah. which goes back to the Dhat of Allah, is Tawheed al-Dhati, and Taqdees of Allah, which is Tawheed al-Fa'ali. Both things they do. You see, dhikr has aqsam. And you've got to understand this as well, that everything you have in creation is a name of Allah, manifest name of Allah. And so therefore what the angels were doing is they were coming to understand God, because you can't understand Him other than through His names. The absolute cannot be understood. So they were there reciting the names. When Insani Kamil comes in front of them, when Allah creates Adam, Adam's mold was there, but at this stage they weren't given the hukum to do sajda. As we discussed before, وَنَفَقْتَ فِيهِمْ مِنْ رُوحِي, when I blow a part of my own soul, part of my soul into them, sajda. What is a sajda? This in itself, if you look at Tawheed, as the way that Muslims take it today, is a contradiction. You could say the Quran is contradicting here. The reason being is this, because Allah is asking you to bow to ghayrullah. It's not the case. This sajda represents submission. Submission to the will of Sahib Amr. Here, Amr of Allah is found in the Mujassim of Adam, Insani Kamil. You bow down, meaning when you submit yourself. Why? The Markaz, Kaaba of the angels, in fact Alam Kawn, is Adam. Why is it Adam? Because Adam is Ism Jam. Adam is the tajalli of Allah itself. The absolute essence is there. And look, I'm not going to go into details. This is not a place to discuss philosophy or mysticism. But the one thing here I will say is that even the angels lost sight of the fact that this Adam is Insani Kamil. Similarly, you find creation. Many people are good, but the one thing they've lost sight of is the wilayah. It's the wilayah that they've lost sight of. And this is why that haqiqah is not here as it is, as it should be. Maybe this is one of the secrets why you have the 10 days of Muharram. The fact that it revives you again, brings you back to the essence. Because remember, the haqiqah of Shiism lies in one thing, and that is salawat. Salawat, as we discussed before, has two components to it. Just recapping, to take you to where I want to take you. Recapping again, has two components to it. The zahir side, which is the physical manifestation of the salawat, and the taslim in front of Muhammad and al Muhammad. Without absolute submission in front of them, there is no way you can cross the sirat. To give you a hadith, those people who are more firm in wilayah, you'll find that their feet are more firm on the sirat towards the final goal. And those people who are not firm in wilayah, it doesn't make a difference whether they're mujtahid or marja, they will not make it to the other end if it's not firm within wilayah. Because one thing is for sure, nobody from the Muslims has more knowledge than shaitan does. And this is why, if you go back to the hadith, where we talk about the time of Hayra, why is the time of Hayra? Because everyone will be in bewilderment. But those people who submit themselves back to the wilayah of the Imam, everyone's heart will be tarnished, and it is tarnished. It's tarnished, it's shadowed and is layered, that you can't see the end. Where is the end? Insani Kamil. In this day and age, Hujjatullah. You can't see it, so it's shadowed. What's required is a methodology to remove those veils. And once those veils are removed, then you won't be worried about the Joneses, as they say. You won't be worried about what people are saying. It won't be like that. In the words of Ayatollah Kashmiri, as he says the only way you can reach that is uzla from people. He found that even though he lived for 20 years in Qum, people, Ahl Qum didn't know that he lived in Qum. Only those people who were Sahib Basir understood who he was. They didn't know. From the time he was kicked out by Saddam to the day that he died, around about 99, nobody knew who lived there. But this is a man who all the Ulafa knew. When Ayatollah Khoui writes a letter to him and says, come back to Najaf, as we discussed yesterday, the time of Saddam, Ayatollah Khoui knew was, Ahl Qum didn't know. By this stage he was quiet, he was in his house. So when somebody asked him a question, they said, look, if we want to go onto this pathway of enlightenment, because remember, this fiqh that you study in the book is the small fiqh. Fiqh al-akbar is that fiqh that takes you towards Allah. That fiqh requires something else. But of course, you've got to get through the Sharia first. You've got to understand the... But look, we're looking at something more loftier. Remember one thing, when I say this, I'm not belittling anything to do with prayer or fasting. Without praying awwal waqt, you can't get to a maqam. Remember that. But the problem is that those people who become religious see prayer as the end goal. Prayer is a wasila, remember this. For everything there's a wasila. Let me give you an example. One day Amir al-Mu'mineen is walking, comes into Mecca. When he comes into Mecca, everyone's gathered around the young man and they're watching him, and he's standing there crying. Tears are dripping from his eyes and they're falling onto the ground. So Amir al-Mu'mineen is walking past. He says, let me ask him a question. Kumail is with him. Imam goes forward. The young man finishes. He says, young man, can I ask you a question? He says, yes. He says, can you tell me what's the haqiqah of prayer? He says, I don't know. Continues to pray. Imam walks off. Kumail asks him a question. He says, Mawla, he didn't understand what the haqiqah of prayer was. All these tears, for what? Yes, ajr is with Allah, sincerity is there, but you haven't got to the level that the prayer is meant to take you. Asked him. Kumail said, Mawla, tell me, what is the haqiqah of prayer? Imam says this. It's me. I'm the haqiqah of prayer. You don't understand me? You become Khawarij, you become Daesh, you become others. You don't know haqiqah until you don't understand Amir al-Mu'mineen. That's the baseline reality. Can you pray more than the Khawarij in the Battle of Nahrawan? No. Can you recite Quran more than the Khawarij in the Battle of Nahrawan? No. What makes them go in one direction, and what makes the companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen go in one direction? Wilaya. Ishq is important. And this is what that wilaya cultivates. It cultivates ishq. Remember this, look. What is a person who's living? What is the definition of a person who's living? What is al-hayy? I won this discussion. It wasn't my topic of today to discuss, but now that we're on it, let's run with it. What is a living? According to hukama, ahl ma'rifah, what does al-hayy mean? What is a person who's living? Do you know what it is? Huwa ad-darrak wa fa'al. A person who can direct something in the sense that is cognizant and he implements on that. Is fa'al. He's active on that. This is why you find that when Allah says to Rasulullah, tell them, no ajr illa al-mawaddata fil qurba. Mawadda is different from hub. Here it says, in kuntum tuhibbun Allah fattabi'uni yuhbibkum Allah. Right? So if you love Allah, you follow the Prophet. Here the Prophet then turns it around and says, love for Allah can be hub, but when it comes to the manifestation with Ahlul Bayt, it has to be wood. What is the difference? Allah's wadud. And here mawadda is talked about. Mawadda is active love. It becomes activated. It's not something that you keep in your heart. Therefore, when you come to a majlis and you recite salawat, for example, that is you showing your mawadda in the way that Ahlul Bayt want you to. It's not just something you keep in your heart. Mawadda needs to be shown. And there are places and times where that physical love needs to be shown. That's what you saw with the companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen. When that love is shown, when there's activity in you, and there's understanding in you, only then that you're alive. Why? Because you've got nur inside of you. Otherwise, what's jahl is the opposite of that. Is a person who doesn't understand, and is a person who's inactive. When a person gets to that, they're dead, according to the hukama. You're walking, but there's no reality to your walking. Al-hayy is a person who is darrak or fa'al. Both of these need to be in a person, to be living. Now go back to yesterday what we said. What is nur? Nur is ma'rifah. Nur is activity. Nur is union. What happens? Batin, what is nur itself? Nur itself is what? In this physical world, in alam-e-kawn, what is nur? We discussed the kaf and the noon yesterday. The kaf of kun defines kamal. But it's dual, right? For everything in this life is dual. For every action you do, it can either take you one direction or the other. Your prayer can take you to hell and your prayer can take you to heaven. That is the system of the world, the way that it works. Kun is a reality. B. Kaf. For Adam it was kamal. For shaitan it was kufr. The noon was nar for shaitan. For Adam it was nur. What is this nur kamaliya? That goes back to the haqiqat al-Muhammadiyah. What is that nur? That nur is the first being. That kun that Allah created. In the words of Ibn Sina, somebody asked him, how does Allah create? When He created 6 days, and then after that Does he create in stages? He says no. Ja'ala Allahu mishmisha. Gave the example. Allah created the apricot. That's it. In one go. Not the color, not the taste. In one go Allah creates. That one go that Allah created, that nuqta that Allah created, is known as Muhammad and Al Muhammad. From then onwards is the substance that creates all of creation. That is the mover. This is why they say that it is haram for anyone to walk on this earth if they do not believe in the wilayah of the Imam, because all of this was given to Zahra. That is what it is. One has to open their eyes up to something which is far more loftier. Because otherwise, what are you living? You're blocking yourself. Hearts are blocked. The only way you can release that, how do you remove that, is with the wilayah. And how do you enhance that, is with your tears. So the crying that you do for Sayyid al-Shuhada. Otherwise, look, if you've gone through 40, 50 years of your life, you're going to be maybe glad to see another 40, 50 years, maybe, if you're lucky. Within that period of time, tell me, this COVID period has seen, children have died. There's no logic to death. But tell me, is there no purpose in your life other than to get up, to go to work, to come back, to backbite, and then to go to sleep? Because look at the tradition, Akhir Zaman is, and people are going to backbite a lot. People are going to talk about other people a lot. People's egos are going to be very big. People are going to justify. And this is what it says in the hadith. The Akhir Zaman, Allah is going to close the doors of Rahmah. You know why He's going to close the doors of Rahmah? Because the doors of Tawbah are going to close. Why are the doors of Tawbah going to close? Because we're going to justify everything that we do as halal. When you start justifying, you lose the tawfiq of Tawbah. This is why it's sometimes better to be not religious. Because at least the door of heaven is open to you than to be, as some of our teachers will say, khushk and muqaddas. I mean, one of the great Urafa of Qum used to say, I said, how can I bring this person to you? He says, if he's khushk and muqaddas, then just leave him in the masjid, don't bring him to my house. Khushk and muqaddas. But what is he trying to say? We don't need puritanical Shias. We need those who are soft-hearted. Those who go above and beyond. Those who are willing to help. Those who are willing to be there for other people. This is true meaning, right? Willing to help each other. Willing to put your own self behind and another person's wants in front. When we talk about the golden rule, what is it? Is want for others what you want for yourself. So look, I deviate. But let's come back again. Come back to what I wanted to say. Time of Hayra. In this time, look, there's two forces which are, you could say, developing, building up. On the one side, you find shaitan. Just look at shaitan for a minute. From the beginning of time to now, Amir al-Mu'mineen says in one of his sermons, Al-Zahir's 192, in that he says that shaitan lived 6,000 years before. So he's got an advantage over all of you. He saw the creation of Adam take place. And he's been watching humanity take place. Unlike me and you, shaitan doesn't sleep. And so in this time, he's building and building and building, and he's experiencing. He knows the haqiqat of insan. He knows your weaknesses. He knows your strong points. He knows you. Right? He's not sleeping, unlike you. You have a life maybe maximum 100 years. In that 100 years, shaitan already knows your weakness. So shaitan is willing to attack you. So in that pace of time, you've got to think, right? What do we do? Allah's allowed shaitan to live. And he's allowed to live until the end of time. And he also knows that when the Mahdi comes, his time is over. So what is he going to do? It says in Akhir Zaman, shaitan becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. Obviously, experience teaches him to become stronger and stronger. He knows exactly how to get to you, in what way to get to you, and what your weaknesses are. And he's refined his process of attack because he's had time to do that. In the words of Sheikh Murtada Zahid, one of the great scholars of Tehran, he was Sahib Nafas as well. He used to come to the masjid. So one day he came into the masjid And literally he was completely out of it. So he was stumbling in his prayer. So students watched, 1 day went by, 2 days went by, 3 days went by. On the third day when he was returning home, they came to him and they asked him, they said, Sheikh, you're sahib al-nafas. What's happened here? You seem completely out of it. You're not 100% there. Is there something that's happened? He says, yes, I'm worried. He says, what worried you? He said, 3 days ago I read a hadith of the Prophet. That's what worried me. He said, what did the hadith say? He said, the hadith said this. Rasulullah speaking to Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, Ali, haqiqat of shaitan is what? He has as many ways of misguiding a person as you have in guiding a person. So now look, today why is it that spirituality is leaving? Religion is becoming literalist and otherwise very moving away, going to the way of the nafs. Because tradition, Ibn Tawus narrates this by the way, tradition is such, our tradition says that you'll see this, when you find morality merging that you don't know what haqq is and batil is. Because you find that when morality will be presented, there will be good in it and there will be bad in it. So what happens? When you mix something up, the truth starts to disappear. Similarly, you go forward and see, what is the method of shaitan? Right? What is the method of Dajjal? And then weigh it with shaitan and look at it and see. When shaitan whispers, a number of things take place. You'll find disunity in our communities. You'll find in our organizations, shaitan will whisper and you'll have fights over nothing whatsoever. Why? Paranoia. Now, I wouldn't even be saying this if I hadn't seen it today. Honestly, you think about it, you think, my God, this is exactly what we're living in at the moment. Perhaps these children don't know, but some of the elders who are running religious organizations, you know how difficult it is. If you've got a cabinet, straight out, one person's paranoid, the entire situation becomes such. It's been predicted. It says in Akhir al-Zaman, because remember one thing, when the believer is divided, barakah is lifted. If barakah is lifted, then what happens? Blessing goes. You know what blessing is important for? Blessing in your time extends time. Blessing in your mal extends your mal. Blessing in your life gives you a long life. Blessing in your children gives them tawfiq to do other things. Shaitan knows that if I can deviate these people, there is a cause and effect in the world. It will lift up the barakah. And when it does, they'll fall, they'll plunder into darkness. So what do you find? Infighting. All over the world, you'll see it. Families which are divided. Now what do I mean by that? If I was to say to you, families which are divided, what does it mean? You find that even today, we can't even sit together and eat as a family. You find the table is there, one person comes, they take it, they go next to the television, another one comes, they go into their room. Islam never came for this. Fifth Imam alayhi salam, when he sat down, he made sure his entire family was sitting down together. This is tarbiyah that he's giving, there's a reason. You've seen in COVID-19 how individuality has led people to depression and suicide. Why? Lack of community. What does Islam say? It's mustahab to pray together. Why pray together? Bringing together a sense of community. Take it a step further. What else does it say? Your fifth Imam alayhi salam would gather his family together and say, whenever there was a problem in the family, I'll pray, you say Ameen. Mustajabud da'wah is the Imam. He doesn't need everybody to say Ameen, but he brought everybody together. Why? Family spirit. Sayyid al-Shuhada goes into Karbala. Never do you see individuality, even in the worst situation. And today you realize that two people are sitting together. One is on the laptop and the other one is on WhatsApp. What are we doing? Shaitan knows. If you can deviate them through things which are mubah, then you find that the causal effect will be that barakah is lifted. And today, sadly, lessons of akhlaq have gone as well. In our communities, even in some of our seminaries. Until that's not there, there's no refinement. There used to be a time which used to be umumi. Remember, some of the great scholars would give dars akhlaq. You see, remember one thing. People talk about irfan being mamnu and najab. That's not the case. There were particular methodologies which were, but there were great scholars that have come out. People like Sheikh Bajjah, they're a product of Najaf, they're not a product of Qum. Said Abdul Karim Kashmir, Allama Tabatabai, Hassan Ilahi, said Hassan Masqati, said Ahmed Kashmiri, they're all a product of Najaf. So if Irfan is mamnu, then none of these great Urafa would come, said Murtada Kashmiri. It's not that, there were certain methodologies. Otherwise they've been great Urafa from both Najaf, Karbala, Qum, Najaf, Mashhad, Jabal Amal, and so forth. Wherever you find that there's Ma'sumin buried, you'll always find people with connection to those Ma'sumin. And remember, the only guides that you have that take you to the higher level is the Imam. This is why in this time, grab onto the hand of the Imam. Remember, Hussein ibn Ali doesn't let you go. So when you're in this time, then what do? It's our responsibility, therefore, to make sure that our eyes are open. Look, there's a tradition that's going in my mind. Let me give it to you. It's a story that took place. I remember there used to be a very big scholar by the name of Syed Ahmed al-Fahri. Syed Fahri used to be in Damascus many years ago. This is one of the founders of the house of Damascus. This is going back about in the 80s, late 80s. He's buried in Mashhad. Great man, he was Sahib Nafas. They used to say he had this Ain al-Basira, in Farsi Chashme Barzakh. He could see the haqiqah of a person. He says that one day, or not him, a family member of Ayatollah Bahjat's, there's one day Sheikh Sayyid Fahri comes to our house. As he comes in, he sits down with my father. His father sitting opposite. He says, "I Bahjat, we've been friends for 60 years. You've not fulfilled the rights of a friend." Can imagine saying that to Ayatollah Bahjat. Ayatollah Bahjat said, "How?" He said, "You learned the pathway and you got to the end. You never turned around to grab my hand and take me as well." He said, I Bahjat began to cry. He was sobbing. Why? It's a big statement when somebody says that you haven't fulfilled. Remember one thing, the one thing that the Urafa do is they fulfill the right of others. He began to cry. He says, "Is this the case?" And he could see that Sayyid Fahri was for real. He wasn't joking. He felt the pain. So Fahri says, he says, "Sheikh, it's too late for me now. I'm 80 years old. You write for me a prescription now for me to get to that level. My time is up. My time is up. I don't have the time now to go through this pathway, but there's one thing. From everything that the Imam you've learned from the Ahlul Bayt, just give me one thing. That's it. Something khas that the Ahlul Bayt have given you." Bahjat replies. He said, I've been given 10 things from Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida alayhi salam. Ayatollah Bahjat said, he says, "I'll tell you one thing. One thing that Imam Rida taught me from the 10 things." He said, "What is it?" He said, "That one thing is this. Imam said to me, if anyone seeks refuge in us Ahlul Bayt, we will never let them go." For 1 second, let that cement in your heart. Your Imam is saying, if anyone seeks refuge in us, we will not let them go. That was enough. Sayyid Fahri got up and he walked out. Remember this. For us to get Ahlul Bayt's karam and barakah requires us to understand something about them. The best way of coming to understand them is to fulfill the huquq which are owed on the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. I'm going to give you one more story. That story goes like this. Think on it. In the time of the Shah, there was a man who used to work in an office. In that office, one of his responsibilities was this. He was in charge of some very important files. One day his boss comes to him. He says, I want this particular file. Have it on this desk before the weekend. As you know, in Iran, the weekend is on a Thursday. Thursday night comes, he cannot find the file. He's looked everywhere. And he says, look, I can't find this file. His boss says, look, if you can't find this file, then know one thing. The least thing that's going to happen to you is we're going to sack you. And what more can happen, only God knows. That day he was so worried. Weekend came. He knew Saturday morning, if that file is not there, it's game over for him. What does he do at that stage? What he does at that stage is he recites Tawassul. Gets on his musalla and begins to recite Tawassul of the Imam. So the time comes in the process of Tawassul that he gets up with tears in his eyes. He walks out of the office. Someone comes to him and says, the answer which you're looking for rests with Sheikh Rajab Ali Khayat. He said, I don't even know who Sheikh Rajab Ali Khayat is, right? I've never seen him, I don't know who he is. So he turns around and he says, look, find him. He gets up and goes to try and find him. Eventually they give ishara. They say that, look, you go into this direction, there you'll find him. Comes to the door of Rajab Ali Khayat. Knocks on the door. Opens the door, goes inside. Sheikh Rajab Ali Khayat is standing inside. Before he could say anything, he just says one thing to him. He says that there is a relationship that you've not honored. And that relationship is the relationship between you and your sister. Her husband has died. For 2 years, you've not gone and visited the yatim of your sister. This man is shocked. He doesn't know what to do. He gets up. He goes to his sister, knocks on the door. Sister comes out. Sister just says one thing. She says, now that you remember me, it's been all this time. You call yourself a man? Call yourself a man. You had a problem with me? Come to me. What these yatims done to you? It's at that stage then that he says, forgive me. Sorry. I'm going to be back in a minute. He goes and buys food, fruits, clothing, brings everything back. He says, haqq is yours that you've told me of. Please forgive me. I want to be forgiven. She says, fine, sister's sister, right? She says, you've come all this way. Just don't do it again. He understands a deep lesson here. Sometimes the smallest of action has the biggest implementation in one's life. He gets up. He goes back. Saturday morning when he's thinking game's over, he looks and he sees that behind the cabinet there's a file. He goes and he lifts up that file. He realizes that's the file. Sometimes a secret to your life and problems is very simple. If ever you feel difficulty, the first point of action that you need to do is to go to your mothers. The very same mothers that have inspired you to come here, to the Majlis, go to them. Seek their intercession. And if your mother's not there, recite a Fatiha. Look, let me tell you something. Ulama have said that whenever you fall into problems and your parents are not alive, go to their grave. Now you turn around to me and say, I don't know where their grave is. It could be in East Africa, it could be in India, it could be in Pakistan, it could be in Iran, it could be in Iraq. What do I do? No problem. Go to the graveyard of the Muslimin. I can't get there. I'm living in the middle of a place where I have to work 7 days a week. I can't. No problem. You can go outside, you can make a line on the floor, make a line, recite Yasin. Between when? Between Thursday after Dhuhr and Friday before Dhuhr. Recite Yasin. And give it to your mother. Ulama of akhlaq say that you'll see that your mother will pray for you there. If not your mother, remember the hukuk of your father. Sometimes you find that a person was the best son or daughter in their life, but then after that, when it comes to the day of judgment, they realize that their maqam is what it should be. They realize father's disowned them. That's why? You forgot my haqq. What was it? After I died, you weren't there for me. You didn't recite for me. When my amal books were closed. So remember, sometimes it's as easy as that. Sometimes it's as easy as that. It's the relationships that we forget. And that blocks the wilayah. Why? Because it blocks barakah. Now look, I'm looking at the time, it's going by fast. I'm going to just say one more thing. Then I'm going to move on. And hopefully we continue this discussion tomorrow. My apologies. I'm reciting slower than usual. My health is not as good as it should be at the moment. Inshallah, tomorrow when I'm back to normal, we can pick up the pace. But the one thing is this. Remember, you've heard from your elders the concept of barakah. Right? You've heard the concept of barakah. Do you know what it is? Do you know what a blessing is? Let me just explain it so that you understand why it's important. I can talk an hour on just barakah alone. But I'll tell you what barakah is. Barakah, Allama Tabatabai gives 3 definitions for it. He says barakah is something which doesn't look anything big. I'll give you an example. If you give me the Quran in a bookshelf looks like one of many different things. But that Quran is full of barakah. You open it up, not only is there shifa for you in every single page. As we said before, you go to one chapter, the secrets of Tayl Ard is in that chapter. You go to another chapter, the secrets of curing yourself from an illness. Another chapter, risk. Another chapter, protection. Another, secrets of the hereafter, and so forth. Right? The Quran. So there's 3 things about barakah. Firstly, it's khair. It gives you good. If Allah blesses you, there's good in it. Second thing is this about it, that it's continuous. I'll give you an example. You spend $900 in Sindh. You dig a well. Small thing, you think, what's this well? $900. That $900 has a lot of barakah. For as long as people are drinking from it, even in your grave, you're benefiting from it. Right? So, it's continuous. It's good. And at the same time, it brings positivity in your life. That is what barakah symbolizes. Something that doesn't look like it, but it's oblivious. I'll give you an example. Final example, and then we move on. Allama Amini. Somebody comes to him when he was in India. He was in Lucknow at the time. And he was researching in the very famous Nasri library. So Allama Amini himself says, he said, look, I've written this, but what Sahib Abaqat wrote is something else. Abaqat al-Anwar is the biggest book that we have on Wilaya. It's about 60 volumes, written by an Indian by the name of Hamid Hussain Musawi in India. After that, his son, very famously, was Marja in India, Nasr al-Millat, in Lucknow. In fact, some of the strongest books on Wilaya that's ever been written has been written by Indians. The reason being is very simple, because there was always Sunni-Shia dialogue going on. It wasn't the same in Iran, and it may not have been the same in Iraq at the time. But with this dialogue continuously, you find that there's a refinement. So when Abaqat was written, Allama Amini he went there to research. He was writing on Ghadir and Sahib al-Ghadir. So Deobandi comes to him. He says, how is it possible that you say that Ali ibn Abi Talib recited 1,000 units of prayers every night? Now remember, Allama Amini, one of his legs was paralyzed, right? He couldn't walk properly in one of his legs. Allama Amini was laughing to himself, thinking, this guy doesn't realize what barakah is. He says, look, at that moment his passion comes, you get angry, passion, and it's inspired by Allah. Is what you're talking about Ali. Even the khadim of Ali ibn Abi Talib can do it. Now you realize what the challenge was. He said, Ya Ali stood up, Allahu Akbar. This Deobandi said 1,000 units of prayers will take, if I estimated, he said it will take 14 hours. He says, no, I'll do it and show you. 7 hours he finished it. Why? Allah stretched the time. That's known as barakah. Majlis, he writes 110 volumes in that time. Barakah. Barakah in time stretches it. You find some scholars, they've written so many books, you're thinking, how does he do it? Barakah. Barakah. Barakah in wealth. Some people, $100,000 they're earning a month, that $100,000 is gone. And then you have a guy who's earning maybe $50, $100, and you find that it stretches. Barakah. Barakah food comes. You're thinking to yourself, this is such a little food, all of a sudden, an extra 200 people have come to this majlis, what am I going to do? Believe me, you don't need to put more water in. You just say, Ya Zahra, and you feed them. Eyewitness accounts physically say this. They say Ayatollah Qadi, when he used to hold a majlis in his house, loads of people came. They said, what are we going to do? They said, what are we going to do? So many people have come. He goes, don't worry. Puts his hand on it and says, Bismillah, feed him. The pot is this big. Food is coming, food is coming, food is coming, food is... What is the secret? Secret is this. Remember, this majlis is not my dad or your dad's majlis. This majlis is Fatimatul Zahra's majlis. And when you have the aqidah that she is going to take care of it, then she will take care of it. You just need to have the faith. You just need to know that. You don't need to be anything. You just need to have aqidah on the fact that she's going to take care of it. She's going to take care of it. Remember this. But look, my time has come to an end. We can talk more, we can go into more detail. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll go back to some of the nitty-gritty of our discussion. Look, you're all gathered here today. Today's very heavy. Half of the 10 days have gone. Today's a very heavy day. Let me say something to you. There were 3 nasls that were destroyed in Karbala, such that today there's no one to call them mother or father. One of them was Muslim bin Aqil, right? One of them is Sayyidah Zainab. Even if I wanted to recite fast, I wouldn't be able to now. I don't have the energy. I'm going to recite slowly. Remember one thing, for those people who have been to the qabr of Sayyidah Zainab, you know du'as answered there faster. Many people have asked the question, why is it so fast that is answered? This is not just Shia who make this hypothesis. Some of my closest Sunni friends have said to me that from everywhere that we've gone, when we go to Sayyidah Zainab, dua is instantaneous. I thought on this, I thought to myself, something came in my mind. When a daughter goes to her father and she says, Father, do something for me, father forgets his own wants and he fulfills his daughter's. When you go to Sayyidah Zainab, or when you take the wasila, then you go to Amir al-Mu'mineen. She comes, she says, Father, one of your Shia has come to me. At that moment, what do you see? What is a father going to do? He's going to say, daughter, Tell me what it is. Today as you sit and know one thing, the only silah that you have in front of Allah are your tears. Haif is today if a person comes and their dua is not answered or their connection is not fulfilled. Don't think today that we're just sitting here. Today when any Masaib, Musibah or the Sayyidah Zainab is recited, all of the Imams come. But look, let me say one thing to you. Perhaps it's a good thing that the lights are switched off. Because today who knows what mother is sitting where to take the condolences of her two sons. If Sayyidah Zainab was to be here today, what would you do? How would you give your condolences? I tell you one thing, this is my firm aqidah, that the minute we talk about Awn and Muhammad, a mother does come to take condolences. But look, I want to start from the beginning. And I'm going to recite quietly. Fathers, this is going to be more painful for you than any mother. You know why? Because you know the relationship that you have with your daughter. Shall I tell you the relationship Amir al-Mu'mineen had with Zainab? If only I can. Zainab was 5 years old when Zahra's body was lying there. Amir al-Mu'mineen fulfills the rights of Zahra. He takes her and he puts her in the grave. As per our wasiyah, he sits down and recites the Quran. After reciting the Quran, they say Amir al-Mu'mineen wants to stand up. In the tradition it says he was only 33 years old. As he tries to stand up, Hadith says his knees begin to shake and they give way. Ali falls back into the grave. A man like Ali falling made him embarrassed. Why? Because he's that man who's the victor of Khaybar and Badr and Uhud and so forth. Salman was standing up there. He just says one thing. He says, Ali, we've not seen you fall in Khaybar like this. What makes you fall like that? One Marja once said, he said that when Ali was in this state, he couldn't make eye contact with anyone out of the grave because he felt embarrassed. But more so, he knew that there were two sons standing there. One was 8 and one was 7. He knew his sons were watching him. First time he tries to get up, he collapses. Second time he tries to get up, he collapses. So third time when he tries to get up, he holds the wall of the grave. Tries to lift himself up. His knees start giving way. Without knowing, from inside a voice comes. You know what that was? Ali says something. He says, Zainab, come to me, my daughter. Your father's feeling weak today. They say two small hands come, says, Father, if my mother's not here, Zainab's here for you. Bond between Amir al-Mu'mineen and Zainab you won't understand. If I had the ability to tell you, I would do. In the custom of the Hijazis, when a daughter would get married, her mother would take her and take her to the house of her husband. They say the day that came for Zainab to get married, she was standing next to the door alone, and an old father was standing behind with tears in his eyes. At that moment, Hassan and Hussein came forward, grabbed the right arm and grabbed the left arm. At that moment, a promise was made by Abdullah bin Ja'far, and that promise was this. He said to his uncle, if ever Hussein goes to Karbala, then I'll let Zainab go as well. If Hussein ever goes to Iraq, then I'll let Zainab go as well. Right? Moving forward quickly, look, I can't recite everything, but I'll get to one part. That part is this. Kufa comes. Kufa. Amir al-Mu'mineen is on the pulpit Fathers, you can relate to this. Amir al-Mu'mineen sees Imam Hassan. He says, Hassan, go to Medina and bring my daughters. Why? Because I'm missing my daughters. Hassan goes. He says, when he gets to Mahalla Bani Hashim, and he says to the daughters, your father's missing you. One daughter, Aqila Bani Hashim, stands up and she says, I miss my father more. Mahmal, everything is prepared. All of the entire Hamla begins to move. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen says something. Imam Hassan goes on the boundaries of Kufa. The camels come to a stop. Imam Hassan goes in. Amir al-Mu'mineen is in Masjid al-Kufa. He goes in, he says that your daughters are here. You know what he says? Alayka bil-layl, sun, night time. Don't come in yet. My ghaira doesn't take it that my daughters come in at daytime. Then he gets on the mimbar, he says, Ahle Kufa, my daughters are coming, understand who they are, go in your houses, whatever happens, don't come out. Amir al-Mu'mineen at night time goes. As he goes forward, he sees that Imam Hassan was holding the reins of the camel of Sayyidah Zainab. He comes forward, he says, son, do you give me the ijazah to take the camel from you and to take my daughter myself? Father, she's your daughter. Goes, grabs on. As he grabs on, he begins to walk. At that moment he stops. He says, Zainab, undo the curtain. Zainab, look, this is the boundaries of Kufa, Zainab. Zainab looks. She closes the curtain again. Amir al-Mu'mineen now begins to walk again. Comes forward, he says, Zainab, now look, Zainab, this is the first street of Kufa. Again she looks up, again Amir al-Mu'mineen begins to walk. Comes forward and says, now Zainab, this is the first road of Kufa. Again begins to walk, but a time comes where even Zainab can't take it. What is that time? When Amir al-Mu'mineen says, undo the curtain, Zainab, this is the bazaar of Kufa. Zainab can't take it. She says, tell Abbas, tell Muhammad the Hanafiya, why are you telling me I'm never going to come here? Says, no Zainab, a time is going to come when I'm not going to be here. Allah bless your tears. Look, I won't be able to recite, you won't be able to listen. Fathers, forgive me that I'm reciting this. I know you can't take it. But now just imagine if Amir al-Mu'mineen is there, and what would you say? Look, I forget everything. I'm accelerating to the last point. Point is this. Amir al-Mu'mineen is about to leave this world. He gathers all of his children together. Once he gathers them, he says something. He says, Hassan, Hussein's not here. Where's Hussein? Can you get my Hussein? Imam Hassan goes into a hujra. There was a small room there. What does he see? Hadith says that Hussein was sitting there. Have you ever seen a baby cry? When a baby cries and it starts choking on its tongue is out of its mouth and it's choking on its tongue. You know what they say? They say Imam Hussein's tongue was out and he was choking, he was crying. At that moment, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Hassan turns around, he says, brother, if you cry like this, what's going to happen to our father when he sees you? Father's calling you. Imam Hussein gets up. Imam Hussein gets up. He goes towards Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, Imam says, son Hassan, Syed is going to be okay. Why'd you cry for? You know what he says? He says something heartbreaking. He says, Father, when our grandfather Rasulullah died, you were there to comfort us. When our mother Zahra died, you were there to comfort us. Father, you're leaving now. This is Kufa. Who's going to be there to... Hussein, this time will pass. La yawmika ya Aba Abdullah. This time will pass. This time, Amir al-Mu'mineen is telling all of them, don't worry, calm down, this time will pass. Eventually a time comes where even Amir al-Mu'mineen can't take it. You know what that time was? When Sayyidah Zainab came in, she began to cry. Amir al-Mu'mineen began to cry. The daughter's pain he couldn't take. They say there was something weird happened at that stage. In the way that Rasulullah had his head on the shoulder of Zahra, in the same way Amir al-Mu'mineen had his head on Zainab. He whispers something into her ear. I looked everywhere to find what that whisper was. I looked everywhere until one mujtahid told me, he said, go to this place and see, I can't say it for you. I went and saw, you know what it said on there? It said this, the most painful moment for Sayyidah Zainab was this, when the Bazaar of Sham came. When the Bazaar of Sham came, they say Sayyidah Zainab sat on the door, she didn't go forward. People were chucking stones at her, she wouldn't go forward. Women chucked hot water, she wouldn't go forward. Shimmer came, he lashed her on the back, she wouldn't go forward. One imam walks forward, says, An, what's happened? Are you startled? Why don't you go in for? She replies, she says, son, I'm not startled. Says, why? Says, I haven't gone in for one reason. Says, what is it? Says, the night my father was leaving this world. Says, the night my father was leaving this world. He says, Zainab, a time is going to come. That time is going to be this. You'll see Bazar-e-Sham is going to be there. Zainab, that time is going to be painful. Daughter, don't worry at that time. Wait for me, Zainab. I'll come and I'll come with you. Says, I'm waiting for my father to come. He said to me, 25. History doesn't say what happened, but an old lady stands up and says, Assalamu alayka, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Look, if I could recite more, I'd recite more. Allah accept your. Just remember one thing who you're giving condolences to. I said for the fathers, now women, my mothers and sisters and daughters who are sitting next door, or wherever you're sitting in this world, remember one thing. Who knows which broken-hearted mother is sitting next to you? If Zahra was to come to you now, what would you give her? What do you have to give? 9th of Muharram comes. 9th of Muharram comes. Everyone has their children in their tents. Imam Hussein is walking past. He walks past a tent. In that tent there's a mother sitting there with 2 of her sons. She's putting her hand through their hair and she's just saying one thing. I'm not going to recite all of it. I'm going quickly to the final part. Saying, she just says one thing. She says, oh my lions, oh my sons, you're the grandson of Ja'far al-Tayyar. You're the grandson of Haydar al-Qarrar. Says, tomorrow there's going to be a day like no other. Sons, I want you to go out and I want you to give your life when it comes to your uncle Hussein. But sons, remember one thing. You'll get to the Furat, sons, but just remember, Sakina's thirsty. Whatever you do, don't drink from the water. Day of Ashura comes. One mother looks and says, why haven't your bodies come back? Why don't you go into the battlefield? Says, my uncle doesn't allow us to go. Says, go and ask your uncle. 2nd time, my uncle doesn't allow. 3rd time, my uncle doesn't allow. You know what Sayyidah Zainab says? She says, call Abbas. Abul Fadl Abbas comes. Says, Abbas, go and tell Hussein, for the sake of my haqq, send my sons. Abbas goes. He says, Sayyidah is saying, for the sake of our haqq, Sayyidah Shuhada stands up. Goes running to the tent. Says, sister, what have you said? I wasn't sending him to the battlefield. Maybe Abdullah bin Ja'far is not happy with it. She says, no, he's told me to send these children. You know what riwayat say? Look, I can't take it, nor can my heart take it to recite this. Riwayat says this. Go to all of Sahib al-Maqatil have all said, Imam Hussein and Abul Fadl Abbas both come out. One puts one on the horse, the other one puts another on the horse. Both of these moons of Banu Hashim go into the battlefield. Both children are fighting, and both children are fighting. One goes from the middle qalb of the army, the other one goes from the side. Both of them come to the Furat. As they come to the Furat, they don't drink from the water. A man comes, he takes a sword, hits it on the head of Aun, and the other one comes and hits it on the head of Muhammad. One of them dies instantly, the other one falls to the ground. As he falls to the ground, he calls his uncle. He says, uncle, come and help me. Sayyid al-Shuhada goes running. When he gets there, this small child has still some energy, life left in him. You know what he turns around and says? He says, uncle, just tell our mother that we got to the Furat, but we didn't drink any of the water. Two bodies are brought back. One carried by Abul Fadl Abbas, one carried by Imam Hussein. Look, you can't take it, I'm not going to recite it anymore. All I'll say is this. All the women, Hashimi women come and they give their condolences. One woman hasn't come out, and that woman is the mother. Imam Hussein turns around and says one thing. He says, where's Zainab? Zainab comes out, sits down in between both of the bodies, puts one hand on one chest, puts one hand on the other, and just says one thing. My lines, which one should I give as sadaqah for Hussein? Eleventh of Muharram comes. All the heads are cut. All the heads are lifted on a spear. This caravan of love is leaving. Sayyidah Zainab one by one goes to the grave, goes to the body of Imam Hussein, goes to the body of Abul Fadl al-Abbas. All the women go to the body of their children or their husbands. They say two bodies, cut bodies, are left on the side. Nobody is going there. Zainab is still a mother. As she walks past, she doesn't look at the body, but she closes her eyes. She didn't want to show weakness. She closes her eyes and she clenches her fist. And she gives wida to her son under her breath. She says, Aun Muhammad wida, and she begins to go. Tradition says that she comes from Kufa to Sham. When Sham comes in, Yazid allows for everyone to go. All the heads are brought back. One first head that's brought back is this. A small baby's head, 6-month-old head was brought. One mother goes up, grabs the small head. Another head comes. That was the head of Ali Akbar. And so one by one, all heads are coming. They say that when Hussein's head comes, Sayyidah Zainab goes, takes that head. That two heads were there. The women of Sham were saying, is the mother dead of these two children? Fidda gets up and says, don't say that. They're the heads of... When the heads are brought again, Zainab closes her eyes, clenches her fist, says wida again. This caravan now goes back to Karbala, comes to Karbala. What happens there? She goes and she chucks herself on the grave of Hussein. Goes to Abul Fadl al-Abbas. Again, there are two graves over there. Again, she closes her eyes, clenches her fist under her breath, again says wida, doesn't show anything. What happens? She goes back to Medina. Look, I'm not reciting any of it. Going back to Medina. What happens in Medina? First place she goes to the what? Grave of her grandfather. Look, you can't take it. Crying continuously is only for Imam Zain al-Abidin. You have sons as well. Mothers now, who are listening to this, now feel this. You've got sons, you've got daughters, and if you don't, then you've got nephews, you've got younger children in your households. Just feel this for a minute when I say this. She goes to the grave of her mother Zahra, the grave begins to shake. I'm not going to recite what happened, you won't be able to take it. A message comes that Abdullah is calling. You know what happens? This is what happens. She goes and she sits outside of the house. Abdullah wasn't home. When Abdullah sees his wife, he doesn't recognize her. He says, oh old woman, why are you sitting outside my house for? She says, Abdullah, recognize me. I'm Zainab. When he looks up, she raises her hands. When she raises her hands, Abdullah collapses. She says, Abdullah, why do you collapse for? Says, Zainab, tell me, these marks on your hands, how did these... She goes inside of the house. As she gets to the sand, that mother who didn't cry in Karbala and that mother who didn't cry in Kufa and Sham, they say when she saw two small musallas there, she goes up, grabs the musallas, puts it to her chest. Oh, then Muhammad, without you I don't want to live any...
گئے مادر کے ادا سارے کے سارے حق کر گئے مادر کے ادا سارے کے سارے ماموں پہ فدا ہو گئے زینب کے دلارے حق کر گئے مادر کے ادا سارے کے سارے حق کر گئے مادر کے ادا سارے کے سمجھاتی تھی بچوں کو بڑے پیار سے زینب سمجھاتی تھی بچوں کو بڑے پیار سے زینب بھولے سے نہ جانا کبھی دریا کے کنارے حق کر گئے مادر کے ادا سارے کے سارے حق گئے مادر کے ادا سارے کے سارے پیاسی ہے سکینہ رہے ہے آن یہی دھیان پیاسی ہے سکینہ رہے ہے آن یہی رے پانی کا تصور نہ ہو ذہنوں میں تمہارے حق کر کے ادا سارے کے سارے حق کر گئے مادر سارے رے گھوڑوں سے گرو بھی تو صدا رن سے نہ دینا گھوڑوں سے بھی تو صدا رن سے نہ گھوڑوں سے گرو بھی تو صدا رن سے نہ دینا دیکھو میں خفا ہوں گی جو ماموں کو پکارے حق کر گئے کہ ادا سارے کے سارے حق کر گئے مادر کہ ادا سارے کے سارے میں خیموں سے دیکھوں گی جاری کون ہے تو میں دیکھوں گی جاری کون ہے میں خیموں سے دیکھوں گی جاری کون ہے تو میں للکار کے پہلے جو بنے سعد کو مارے حق کر گئے مادر
کرتے ہیں ماتم حرم عباس کا عباس کا کرتے ہیں ماتم حرم عباس کا کرتے ہیں ماتم حرم عباس کا لٹ گئے آل محمد کے گھرانے والے لٹ گئے آل والے لٹ گئے والے لٹ گئے تر سے پانی کو سر کے پلانے والے لٹ گئے ہو گئی شام انہیں شام کے بازاروں میں ہو گئی شام انہیں کے ایک بیمار کو لاکھوں ہے ستانے والے ٹوٹ گئے آل محمد والے زیر آل محمد کے گھرانے ذرا کہتی بخش والوں گی انہیں میں شر میں ذرا کہتی بخش والوں گی انہیں جو میرے لال پہ آنسو ہے بہانے والے رک گئے آل محمد والے لٹ گئے والے پانی تک تو نے نہ پایا میرے مظلوم حسین پانی تک تو نے نہ پایا میرے مظلوم کند خنجر سے بھی پیاس اپنی بجھانے والے لٹ گئے آل محمد کے گھرانے والے لٹ گئے آل محمد کے گھرانے رو کے کہتی تھی سکینہ میرے چاچا ہو کہاں رو کے کہتی تھی میرے چاچا ہو کہاں لوٹ کر آئے نہیں پانی پلانے والے لٹ گئے بولی زینب جو گری خاک پہ تصویر رسول بولی زینب جو گری خاک پہ تصویر چل بسے یاد بنا نہ کیا دلانے والے لٹ گئے آل محمد کے گھرانے والے لٹ گئے آل محمد کے گھرانے
یا حسین
میں آنو محمد کو تیرے پاس ہوں لائی میں آنو محمد کو تیرے پاس ہوں لائی میں آنو محمد کو تیرے پاس ہوں لائی میں سے ہوں لائی، اور دامن دکھیا میں نہیں کچھ میرے بھائی، میں آن و محمد کو تیرے پاس ہوں لائی، میں آن و محمد کو تیرے پاس ہوں لائی، قربانی میں کرتے میرے بھیا میں تم ہی پر، بھیا میں تم ہی پر، ہاتھوں میں اگر ہوتی میرے ساری خدائی، میں آن و محمد کو تیرے پاس ہوں لائی، آن و محمد کو تیرے پاس ہوں لائی، قربانی کو دو لال ہیں بھیا میرے حاضر، بھیا میرے حاضر، یہ عرض میں کرنے کو تیرے پاس ہوں لائی، میں آن و محمد کو تیرے پاس ہوں لائی، میں آن و محمد کو تیرے پاس ہوں لائی، اے بھائیا یہاں خون سے چراغوں کو جلاؤ، چراغوں کو جلاؤ، ظلمت سے اگر لڑنی ہے صحرا میں لڑائی، میں آن و محمد کو تیرے پاس ہوں لائی، میں آن و محمد کو تیرے پاس ہوں لائی، حیدر کا لہو ہے یہ بجھا سکتا ہے پل میں، بجھا سکتا ہے پل میں، دشمن نے جو اسلام کو ہے آگ لگائی، میں آن و محمد کو تیرے پاس ہوں لائی، میں آن و محمد کو تیرے پاس ہوں لائی، قربانی میں کرتی میرے بھیا میں تم ہی پر، بھیا میں تم ہی پر، ہاتھوں میں اگر ہوتی میرے ساری خدائی، میں آن و محمد کو تیرے پاس ہوں لائی، ماواں کربلا دیاں ماواں، ماواں کربلا دیاں ماواں، ماواں کربلا دیاں ماواں، کربلا دیاں ماواں، پتراں دیاں لاشاں دے ٹکڑے رہیوں لب دیاں وچ سہراواں، ماواں ماواں کربلا دیاں ماواں، پتراں دیاں لاشاں دے ٹکڑے رہیوں لب دیاں وچ سہراواں، ماواں 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 کربلا آکے ماں قسم دی ماں تے احسان کری دیر تائیں لڑدا رویں تیرے ٹکڑ مطابق ودنیاں نے میرے ویر حسین دی ساواں ماواں کربلا دیا ماواں صبر دے مالک نو سین لیلا کے اذن دی ویتی تے میں صبر دت سوجچ اکبر دے سینے چو سانگ ہٹاواں ماواں کربلا دیا ماواں آکے ماں قسم دے ماں تے احسان کری سین لئی روی تیرے ٹکڑ مطابق ودنیا نے میرے ویر حسین دی ساواں ماواں کربلا دیا ماں جدو قیدی ہو کے لائیاں مقتل چو وین زینب کیتا رنگ لش آول ماواں نا ویکھن کتھے رک نہ جاون ساواں ماواں کربلا دیا ماواں ماواں آکے ماں قسم دی ماں تے احسان کری سین لئی روی تیرے ٹکڑ مطابق ودنیا نے میرے ویر حسین دی ساواں ماواں کربلا دیا ماواں ماواں
السلام علیکم ابا عبداللہ، السلام علیکم ابن رسول اللہ، السلام علیکم ابن امیر المؤمنین و ابن سید الوسیین، السلام علیکم ابن فاطمۃ الزہرا و سیدۃ النساء العالمین، السلام علیکم ابن خدیجۃ الکبریٰ ام المؤمنین، السلام علیکم یا ابو الفضل العباس یا ابن امیر المؤمنین، السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ، السلام علیکم یا غریب الغرباء، السلام علیکم یا معین الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام علیکم یا شمس الشموس ایہا المدفون بارض طوس، السلام علیکم یا سلطان یا ابو الحسن یا علی ابن موسی رضا، السلام علیکم یا معصوم خم، السلام علیکم یا شہداء کربلا جمیعا ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ، السلام علیکم یا صاحب العصر والزمان، الامان 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 من فتنة الزمان، شریک القرآن کعبۃ الایمان امام الانس والجان، اجل اللہ تعالی فرجک وسهل اللہ تعالی مخرجک وظہورک وجعل اللہ من انصارک وآوانک ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ، اللہم صلی علی محمد و نعرہ حیدری۔
What?
That's good, man.